the next part of that is matching that formulation with products that are available in your geographic area that match either 100%, 75, 50%, the closest match that we can possibly find to that suggested ratio so you can have an optimal experience.
Wow. So I wonder why this isn't used in everyday medicine.
uh, it, it is used in some everyday medicine, but we just came back from the Digital Health Summit in Vegas, part of CSC, and one of the things that we were learning is that you only need a 30% success rate for a medication to pass through FDA approval. So if genetics, once again, I'm just making a hypothetical, but I'm making an assumption, if genetics are used in that process, number one, it'll become a much more costly process. Number two, it'll become a much more lengthy process. Number three, you probably will have a lot less success in adoption because some people are genetically predisposed. Now, we're involved in doing clinical trials in Australia right now, and the first clinical trial we'll be doing is with late-stage dementia patients. So the idea is that each dementia patient will get swabbed, will get a genetic profile, and then they will all be administered a cannabinoid profile that's the same. And we'll be able to tell, based on potential genetic expression, we'll be able to tell if they have a different relationship with that efficacy than somebody that has a different genetic profile. And that's the way the future of medicine is going to be going. I believe we're on the cusp of something new and something exciting, but I believe that, I believe genetics are going to be a huge part of the way that we're all going to work on not only medicating ourselves, but also our overall health and wellness plan, because we have markers that help you associate nutrition. Like, what are the things that you put in your body? We have markers that help you with associating skin, cell expression, all different kinds. And that's only one view to look at your optimal health. In terms of genetic is the foundation. You should know what your possible genetic expression is before you put anything into your body, because a lot of those things that you do can trigger those genes. So
it's fascinating. So are you working by any chance with the Mazurs down in Australia? Because they were working on an Alzheimer's study the last time I spoke with them. Gosh, last year.
No, our partnership is with a company called Ward, WARD Medical Management. So Ward is one of the top companies in the world on reporting drug-to-drug interaction. So when somebody goes in the hospital and, God forbid, has to they have to take they're on 4 different prescription medications. They have to take a 5th prescription medication. There's a database to be able to look in and see if that 5th medication is going to affect the way that your other drugs, the efficacy of the other drugs you're taking, or you can have a negative experience with that. So we're working with them because they have a lot of information on drug-to-drug interaction, and that's the kind of thing that we want to get into as well, because this is sort of off on a tangent a little bit, but I think it's relevant. So I was at a conference. I was speaking at a CBD conference in Florida, I believe. But I was walking the floor, and everybody's trying to differentiate their product in some way. And I found this to be interesting. There was a person there that had products. I'm not going to mention what the products are, but had products that had labels on different medical conditions. So, in alphabetical order from A to Z. AIDS, autism, epilepsy, you name it down the line. And it kind of paused and struck me, because I asked him, I said, well, you're making some interesting claims here. Has the FDA reached out to you? And he said, no, not yet, but when they do, and if they do, we'll just change their labels.
Oh, no.
And I said, okay, well, change your labels. That's one thing. I said, do you actually know how CBD works? And he said, of course I do. It reduces inflammation. We all do. A CB2 receptor and all that stuff. I said, yeah. I said, it kind of makes sense. And I really don't want to come off as a know-it-all, because somebody's trying to, do something and they're trying to create a business. But this is a much bigger than somebody's business. That has to do with the stigma that's associated with this amazing plant for years and years. So we want to make sure that we remove the stigma, and by making claims that are not true or actually causing harm to somebody, that can make things worse. So I said to him, well, one of the things that it does, it actually inhibits some of the function of your immune system. So it suppresses some of those functions. So cannabinoids are modulators. So for the most part, you don't know. Sometimes it can increase the efficacy, but for the most part, in an average person, it's an immune suppressant. So what I was trying to explain to him, that if you have a condition that has an overactive immune response, autism is linked to that, epilepsy is linked to that, some of the other conditions like Crohn's, because it just increases the inflammation, and that inflammation causes, pain or discomfort. You have to take an analgesic for that, but you need to reduce the way your immune system is working, so it reduces the inflammation that is being caused by an immune response that's not appropriate. That makes sense. I said, but you're talking about AIDS, for instance. So that is already a suppressed immunal condition. That is a disease that has a reduced T cell count. Your immune system is already suppressed. And if you're suggesting or recommending that somebody consume CBD for that, it's going to suppress the immune system even more. And if that's the case, you may actually create a harmful side effect for somebody. Maybe it's not your intention, but if their immune system is reduced already, and you're reducing the efficacy of their prescription medications that they're taking, guess what? That you can make them susceptible to some sort of virus, pneumonia or something else that can cause a very, obviously, in an AIDS patient, it can be very, very serious. So why would you want to do that? That's the thing that we want to try to avoid as much as possible. So we want to give people genetic markers and sort of a plan, a roadmap of how to consume your cannabinoids properly. And the drug-to-drug interaction is a huge part of that, because if you're consuming an antidepressant medication or an anti-anxiety medication and you want to start consuming CBD, guess what? You are reducing the efficacy of that SSRI, that medication. So you have to talk to your healthcare professional and see how you can stagger that, which is doable. There's a plan that you can put in place. But if you're going to self-medicate, you just need to be educated on how to do that correctly.
Well, you raise a really good point, too, because, most people who enter the cannabis industry enter with very good intentions, and they're in awe of the healing properties. And, if they go half-cocked and they don't have the right information, like you said, they could be causing more harm than good. And that absolutely destroys the reputation of the industry as a whole. So I find it very interesting that the attitude that, well, we'll change our labels when the FDA comes after us. Well, I've got really bad news, and that is that the FDA has been given a whole new set of powers to go after people ever since the hemp bill passed when it comes to CBD. Because now they're exercising the fact that CBD was assigned its own numerical code in Schedule 1. So they're making it more difficult for producers to actually get their medicine out, the CBD products out into the consumer's hands, especially, if they don't have production facilities in every state. So it's going to be very difficult. And I feel for this person, whoever it is. Don't disclose it to me here, but I think that is just instructive for people like that who really do need to know. They've got to start paying attention, and eventually CBD will be removed from the CSA altogether, in which case then it'll be treated like vitamin C. But like vitamin C, which is perfectly legal to buy, sell, consume, manufacture, and all of that, you still have these FDA guidelines. So just because we're operating with a federally illegal substance doesn't mean you can ignore the rules that apply to every other supplement out there on the market. It's really... Yeah, it's a little bit annoying. It's not a little bit. It's very annoying to me to hear that.
They're in for an awakening. They're there's a lot of people who are not prepared for regulations, and CBD is sold everywhere, like we said before, and you're absolutely 100% right, because when it's rescheduled, it's still going to be there's still going to be controls in place, and it's going to be regulated. So you need a GMP facility. You need to follow the guidelines of, as you mentioned, a vitamin or a supplement or a medical food. There are guidelines in place, and most of these producers are just not prepared for those kind of regulations. But I'm not a big proponent of regulations or government, but we need some of those to make sure that this product is made in the highest standards possible, so people can feel comfortable consuming that as their wellness, their treatment, whatever it is that they consume CBD for, even if it's a preventative product. Like if you have genetic markers that show that you have a higher propensity towards early onset dementia or Alzheimer's, as we mentioned, well, if that was the case, I would be consuming CBD every single day as my supplement, because it will help with that neurodeterioration, according to what the research has been done, in Israel, some here, some in Canada. So these are the things we need to do. But how do we maintain the standard of the actual production method? How do we know that we're going to get a good quality product? And then that's one thing. Number two, how do we know that we're going to get the right type of product for us based on our genetic profile, genetic expression, and our metabolic function as well? And that sort of ties the two together.
Yeah, I think even if you don't like regulation, most people appreciate being able to go to the grocery store, pick up a chocolate bar, and see what's in it.
Yep.
One of the very first things that happened at the change of the presidential administration in 2009 was the revision to the Food Act. And that revision actually made it illegal to adulterate food. Well, by definition, GMO foods are adulterated. And a lot of people were saying, why do we need to have all of this regulation? And then you look at them and you say, well, if you have children and care about what you're putting in your children's bodies, then you want to have these regulations in place. And a lot of those restrictions were actually removed recently, which is maybe good news for the manufacturers, but bad news for consumers, because now we're not really sure what's going into our food products. But with CBD especially, the whole point of liberating cannabis from the Controlled Substances Act is so that we have access to a medicine that is more purely aligned with our bodies, because now we know we have an endocannabinoid system that processes that medicine a lot better than it processes anything synthetic that has to go through the liver and create all sorts of havoc in the body, which causes you to have to take even more drugs. Cannabis is a lot more holistic in terms of the way that it heals your body. So I think this whole thing with the genetic profiling is absolutely fascinating. And quite honestly, I wish that we were going that direction in medicine for mainstream preventative medicine, just so that we're aware of what's going on in our bodies. So,
well, we are doing that in a way, or Big Pharma is doing that in a way, but they're doing it in a different way, because if you look to see what relationships Big Pharma has with the bigger genetic companies like 23andMe, for instance, like if you take in a 23andMe, you go through various disclaimers that actually tell you that your data is being sold to these pharmaceutical companies. So
you
now,
read my mind. You read my mind there.
well, it's exactly it. So I went through it. I've taken all of them, and just so I can do research, market research, and everything else. And when you look at that, say, okay, well, my information, I said no, but I'm assuming my information went to J&J, went to Merck, I went to GlaxoSmithKline, whoever else. But I found it fascinating that when GlaxoSmithKline invested their $350 million into 23andMe, a week later, their API was closed, meaning that J&J and the other companies no longer can get that information through an API directly to them. They actually have to go through GSK to get their information. And they care that it's Len May's DNA, and this is how I answered the survey, because they care about my personal information, and I don't know where that's going to go. I'm sure it's not HIPAA compliant. I don't know. It may end up going to an insurance company at some point. We don't know. But one of the things we set out to do was in our business plan, we don't care that's Len May's DNA. Our goal is to collect enough data that's